Hello, Saltines. It is Michael with the Salty Witches podcast by Cat and Cauldron. So welcome to the first episode of Esoterica. These additional episodes are something that we thought that we would feature to get back to you on a more consistent basis with answers to the questions that you ask us on our regular episodes. We're posting regular episodes on a bi-weekly basis, and rather than making you all wait 2 weeks for replies, responses to your questions, we figured it would be good maybe to get back to you, um, you know, ideally within a week of the episode in which you ask them, right? So here we are. Okay, so you can look forward to more of these. These will be a regular thing, okay, as we continue to get questions from you, okay? And you'll probably see me doing these, solo. We'll see. That may change in future. I don't know. We'll see. As of right now, I'm going to be kind of doing these by myself, but um, unless, of course, the questions that you ask are more within Austin or Mia's field of expertise, and then if that's the case, we'll see something else happen. So let's dive in, okay? Um, so we've got questions again from this week's episode. Let's see. I'm so sorry. I've got these all noted here. Forgive my disorganization. All right, question. Someone would like to request more information on planetary timing and moon mansions. Okay, so planetary timing is an interesting thing. It's a really powerful thing, particularly if you are someone that likes to work closely with alignments and correspondences when you're doing spiritual work, ritual work, spell work. It can be as important to factor in the time of day and where planets are in their greatest influence, in relation to where they sit in the solar system, right? And it can be just as significant to factor in those things as it can be to consider the herbs that you use, and really just all of those other things, right? And so it's something that I always consider, when I'm doing work, and it's something that I definitely teach my students, as I'm mentoring, as I'm teaching people. I always tell people, like, hey, learn some information about your planetary alignments, and do factor in planetary hours. So the idea really, kind of just explaining that, in a very simple way, is that each day is influenced by a particular planet, right? And we see that primarily within the Hellenistic um, you know, uh, uh, definition of our understanding of our planetary system, right? So we have Sunday for our sun, right? Right. Monday Moon, Tuesday Mars, Wednesday Mercury, Thursday Jupiter, Friday is Venus, and Saturday is Saturn, right? We don't see Neptune, Uranus, Pluto. We don't see those extras in there, right? Because at the time that most of these magical and ritual practices were being created and popularized, right? We didn't have those extra planets, right? So we still see the kind of this basic system with kind of just these more, these planetary bodies and celestial bodies that sit further into our solar system, right? But what happens basically with the planetary calculator is that the idea in the simplest terms is that the first hour of each day is given rule, or is seen to begin under the influence of the planet that rules or influences the day, right? So on a Sunday, from midnight approximately, we would say midnight to 1 a.m., right? And this is not exact, please, this is not exact, right? You need a little more than just me, that to do this exactly, right? But the idea roughly is that from midnight, right, the first moment of Sunday, right, from midnight to 1 a.m. on a Sunday, that is the first hour of influence of the sun, right? It's kind of the idea, right? And then we move through other planets, right? Until we cycle through all planets, and then we see another hour of influence by the sun, right? And then again, we cycle through, and there could be another hour of influence by the sun within that day, right? And it kind of is a pattern that flows like that through each day of the week, right? And so the idea with that, incorporating something like that into your magical work, into your spiritual work, is that if you are doing a working, say, for uh, money, right, and say you want that money to come really quickly, right, you could do that working on a Thursday, right? Which is such a good day because of its Jupiterian influence, right? Thursday is like Thursday because of its Jupiterian rule, right? Jupiter is like the daddy warbucks of the solar system, right? Is kind of how a lot of people explain that, right? Just prosperity, beneficence, right? Just luck, all those good things, wealth, right? So you could do that working for money on a Thursday, but because you need the influence of speed, you could do that working on a Thursday in an hour that was ruled by Mercury, because Mercury is good for speed, right? Say you're doing a spell for love. You could do that spell, obviously, or would probably most likely want to do that spell on a Friday, right? Which is, of course, the day that is influenced by Venus, right? Um, but say you want that love to have more of a physical, like for you, love is more about like the passion and the sex and the physical, like the fireworks of, those kinds of elements of love, right? And so with that being the case, you want to do that spell on a Friday to get that Venusian influence, but maybe under the hourly influence of Mars, right? Because Mars is all about like the passion and the sex, right? So those are just some basic ways to kind of explain how you can factor in planetary timing into your ritual and into your spell work. And you can play with those things, right? There are planetary calculators. If you do just a simple Google search, you can, for like something like planetary hour calculator or something like that, you can find so many out there. There are a lot of them out there. And depending on whether you're on like an Apple device or an Android device, like there are different apps for them. And yeah, and I do recommend that on your phone, like you can install an app on your phone, and then you have something right at your fingertips, right? So that wherever you are, right, you can research that information, right? Those calculators will come in really handy, because otherwise it's going to probably be tricky for you to pinpoint exactly where those planetary hours are because they don't run evenly. The example I gave you earlier about that first hour of the day on Sunday from like midnight to 1, unfortunately, they don't work like that. It would be so easy to say, oh yeah, it's from midnight, right, to 1 o'clock, but they don't work like that. Usually they kind of run between hours, so it's going to actually be something that's going to be like, oh, from like 12:21 to 1:18 in the morning on Sunday. That's going to be the hour of influence, the first hour of influence for the sun on that day, right? So they're never really like exactly within our hours. Yeah, so that's where calculators can become helpful. Yeah, but these are very powerful things, when we look at the way that we believe that these planetary intelligences, these planetary bodies, influence us, even, if you are someone who lends credence to astrology and the power that these planets have on just who you are as a person, by extension, it would make sense that these planets would absolutely have significance on your spiritual work, the magical work, the spell work, the ritual work, whatever you call it, right? So it's something to consider. And I will tell you that the work that I do personally, the spell work I do personally, where I factor in planetary information, planetary hours, these kinds of things, because I don't always, depending on the situation, I won't always, but I will say the bigger spells, the things where I'm like, I really I need this to materialize in just this way. I need this to kick off in just this way, where I incorporate that planetary information. Those are always my most successful spells. And so it's worth a try. Okay. So let's move on to moon mansions. Moon mansions are a little more complicated. In order to really fully understand moon mansions or lunar mansions, you're probably going to need to do a little bit of additional research into lunar-based astrology. There's a very old grimoire known as the Picatrix, and you're in luck because the Picatrix, I believe, within recent years was translated by Michael Greer, who is a very well-known magician, a very well-known occultist. And he's got a lot of different books out there. But Michael Greer did do a translation um, of the Picatrix, and the Picatrix is actually a book of magical systems that is based primarily on lunar astrology and the mansions of the moon, how to structure ritual around lunar mansions. Um, Lunar astrology or lunar mansions, I guess, specifically moon mansions, in the context of what we kind of do here on the podcast and talk about most on the podcast is really primarily going to have more to do with talismanic magic. Um, which is again extremely powerful magic, and something that all of us, I think, kind of get involved in at some point, you know. And it has a lot to do with the way that the moon moves in its orbit around Earth and the way that that orbit around Earth allows the moon to interact not only with us, but with the other energies of the zodiac, the different houses within the zodiac and those energies. It's something that is definitely an element of planetary magic. I've talked a little bit about planetary magic on the podcast in prior episodes. Although I will say what I think you're looking into, and if you decide to pick up a copy of the Picatrix, you're going to find information in there that is much more complicated than probably what I deliver when I discuss planetary magic on the podcast. Lunar magic is, again, I think it's a different take. It's a bit more traditional, or a bit more traditional view when you look at just astrology. In that I think I won't say it's older necessarily, but it's something that is more commonly practiced in, I think, Asian cultures. It is accessible to anyone. So it's something that I think would definitely be worth looking into if you are of interest. And yeah, but that would be what I would recommend if you really want a more thorough explanation, beyond just that real quick gloss that I gave it. Look into Michael Greer's translation of the Picatrix, because that's really what it's about. And yeah, but that's what it is in essence. It's the tracking the position of the moon in its orbit around Earth and the way that it then interacts not only with Earth, with us, but also with the different energies coming from the zodiacs. Um, all right, and thank you so much for those questions. All right, let's see. Questions from Mama Cole. Let's see. Those questions were from Tashral2545. If I mispronounce these usernames on YouTube, please forgive me. Okay. I don't want to offend anybody or upset anybody. Mama Cole. Let's see. Well, thank you so much. It's very sweet of you what you shared in here in your comment this week. Um, and good luck on that journey, continuing to learn. We're always learning, all of us. We are always learning. Um, Suggestions on where to go to learn, what to read, and how and where did we start? And you mentioned specifically how to start in the right way. Let's talk about that first. I'm going to tell you right now that so many people there's this thing that happens, I think, for most of us, when we dive into occultism, alternative spiritualities, whatever they may be, right? I think there's this mindset that we fall into, and I think it's a carryover from religious trauma, for a lot of people, or just this idea that that we're kind of given, that we're kind of programmed with it, that that there's only ever one right way to do something, or that if we try something and we don't do it right or we fail, that there's going to be some horrible consequence, that we'll never be able to win our way back from, or that we could be punished in some capacity. And those things don't exist in alternative spiritual practices. And so for all of you who are watching this, for all of you who see this, I want you to do yourself a big favor. I want you to give yourself a free pass from that idea that there's only one right way to do these things. That does not exist. There is no one right way. There is no one true path. There is no one true teacher. There is no one right anything, right? Because ultimately, the one right way is the way that works for you, right? And it doesn't matter if it's a way that I agree with or a way that worked for me, right? It doesn't matter as long as it works for you and you're happy, and it's truly, like, it's truly nourishing your soul and helping you to grow in good ways and healthy ways, and it's not creating greater imbalance. You're not spiritually bypassing. It's not creating other difficulties or challenges for you in your life. Then that's the right way for you. So let that go, all of you, please. Okay, there's no right way to do this. That being said, when you are diving into these kinds of studies and into pagan communities, spiritual communities, alternative spiritual communities, you do want to be a little cautious about that because there are a lot of very extreme kinds of personalities and people out there, and there will be a lot of people out there that will try to tell you like this is the right way, and I always try to encourage people, to listen to what those people maybe have to say, hear them out, but get a second opinion or maybe even a third opinion before you really buy in. Okay. Um, just because anybody that is going to be so extreme, particularly to somebody who is expressing that they're new and that they're still kind of feeling their way through things and they haven't really made a commitment to any one idea or thought. Anybody that would come at you with like, oh, well, this is the one truth, this is the right way. Yeah, that person isn't really interested in helping you. That person isn't really interested in teaching you or guiding you. That person is trying to start a cult. And you don't want to, you don't want to sign up. You don't want to be a part of that. That's a bad decision every time. Um, anyway, so let go of the right way kind of thinking. That doesn't exist. Okay. That's a normal thing that we all have those moments. We all go through that. Um, as far as to where we started, our origin stories, Austin and I's origin stories are a little bit different because Austin and I, from a very young age, we were really kind of brought up with these kinds of things. We were lucky on one hand because we were given a very easy introduction into these kinds of belief systems and practices. A lot of people hear that and they go, "Oh God, how nice must that have been?" You didn't have to go through all the years of deprogramming, and you didn't have to go through all the years of religious trauma, and you didn't have to. And while that is true, being brought up in these belief systems and in these practices is, I assure you, had its own systems of or its own set of challenges. It's hard, I think, being on the outside of everything, particularly when you're a child and all that you really are seeking is acceptance. It's difficult being the kid on the street that no one else is allowed to play with. It's difficult being the kid in school that doesn't understand what everybody does at church, and is made fun of it or made fun of for it. And I'm not sitting here like, oh, poor me, poor me. When I was a kid, I definitely had some struggles with that. As an adult now, I actually can see strength in that. I think that those experiences made me a lot stronger. I think there's absolutely strength to be found in being the outsider. And we need to get comfortable with being the outsider if we're ever going to be able to really excel in any spiritual practice. Because to be a truly powerful spiritual practitioner requires that you must learn to be comfortable with discomfort, and you must learn how to be comfortable living on the outside of what so many other people deem acceptable. Um, yeah, you can't conform. You cannot conform and attain enlightenment. I think we can definitely see that in the story of the Buddha, right? Anyway, back to your questions. I'm so sorry. That was a kind of a little bit of a self-serving tangent there. Forgive me. Um, it doesn't really matter where you start, to be honest. It doesn't matter what your origin story may be. There doesn't really need to be any particular kind of beginning. For you to dive into these things, for you to make the decision that you want to choose something new for yourself. That's just it. You just have to make the decision, and then at that point you start to pay attention to what you have around you in the realm of resources. We live in a world now that is full of information. You mentioned in your question actually that one of the challenges that you've run across is all the misinformation out there, and again, I want to say my answer to that piece of your question is really probably not going to be the most satisfying because my personal belief is that you need to actually sift through the misinformation as well. It is necessary, I think, for us to go along a little bit with some of the game and some of the BS and some of the nonsense. Ultimately, all of us will buy into some of that. And I think sometimes that we need to have those experiences, that we need to go through um, we need to sift through some of the lies and that we need to sift through some of the nonsense because those experiences ultimately will be the ones that will teach us the most. And if you've had a moment, any of you have had a moment along the years where you've bought into something, you've incorporated something into your belief system, and then years later you realized, like, oh God, no, oh, what was I thinking? That was so wrong. Oh God, no. We've all had that moment, maybe more than once, right? But in that moment, don't punish yourself. Don't beat yourself up and don't feel like you have failed. Those moments are necessary. We have to have those tiny failures, because again, they teach us. Each time we reach for something that bites us, we learn a very powerful lesson. Each time we try something and it doesn't work out, we then know, oh, not that thing, not that thing, right? And our path towards individual truth becomes more clearly defined. So there really is no there's no wrong thing if you look at it in that perspective, other than the things that you clearly identify are wrong for you. And I can't tell you what those things are, right? Only you can know what those things are. Right. So pay attention to those things. Base your decisions when you look at what you're seeking on a spiritual level. And again, this is for everybody who would see this. Base the things that you choose for yourself on a spiritual level on your very day-to-day life values. If you are someone who is uncomfortable, for whatever reason, in getting involved in groups of people where people are, very open with their sexuality, and I'm not making a judgment here, okay? I'm trying to relate it, an example. Right, because I've had this conversation with a lot of people over the years as someone who once facilitated a coven, that was a successful coven for many years, and then people being people, right? As they often do, covens kind of sometimes fall apart. Um, but um, but many people would approach our coven, and one of the big concerns that people often had is, do you work skyclad? And no, indeed, we did not. And we made that very clear. No, we do not. For one thing, you don't need to work magic and to raise power and to do ritual properly. No, you don't need to. But that's an example, one that often comes to mind. If you are uncomfortable standing naked in a room full of people, um, don't choose to work with that group of people, right? Don't choose that particular spiritual path. Right. If you're someone who delights in like naturism and you have no problem disrobing and sharing your naked body with anybody, right? Then oh my God, then Tradwicca might be a good option for you, right? And skyclad work is probably something that's going to be really comfortable and easy for you, right? You need to make decisions on your spiritual practice that are going to be based upon your values. If you are someone who is by nature a kind and generous and a charitable person, look into spiritual practices that have emphasis on kindness and compassion and charity. Many of them do. Many of them teach, like, take care of your community, take care of the world, take care of the spirits around you, right? Conserve, recycle, right? Be mindful of your place in the world and the impact that you have, right? And there are a lot of other spiritualities that don't give a shit. They're like, hey, the world is disposable and do whatever the hell you want because this world doesn't matter, right? Because pretty soon we're all going to be moving on to the next one, right? And that's a really unfortunate way to live, I think. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that we see with traditional religions, right? Is they think that this world is disposable because pretty soon we're all going to go somewhere else, right? And I'll say right now, I think that that's not only unfortunate, I think that that's bullshit, but that's not up to me to dictate that belief system for all those many many people who choose it, right? So pay attention to those things, right? If it's something that you choose on a spiritual level that ultimately is going to run counter to what you value in your life day to day, that is not a spiritual practice that is going to work for you long term. um as far as what to read everything. Read everything. You say you're really new, and I'm not quite sure from what you've shared here what you've already perhaps picked up. If you're looking for reliable information, good authors, I would recommend anything written by, oh my goodness, Spells for Change by Frankie Ann Castaneda is an excellent book for beginners. I love the book How to Become a Witch, or is it How to Become a Witch? Yeah, How to Become a Witch by Amber Kay. is another one that I really like to recommend. I really like anything written by Melanie Marquis. Melanie Marquis, Marquis. She's a brilliant writer, and she's just got this way of writing things in her books that she just, oh God. Laura Tempest Zackroff. Sorry, I always murdered that middle name. Laura Tempest Zackroff, is amazing. And again, another voice, and anything she writes is going to be worth reading. And I love the way that she writes because she puts things in a way where it's like you don't have to buy into any one particular belief system to work with the things that she puts in her books. Um, Oh God, Jason Miller, if you're someone that's more into sorcery and the occult, maybe less the witchcraft, but kind of more of the occult kind of bend to your practice, Jason Miller's works are amazing. Um, God, there are so many, John Beckett, who is kind of more within the realm of nature-based practice, druidry. And he's very scholarly. He's very much, kind of more of an academic, his books, but he's another amazing voice. I keep saying the word amazing. I need another adjective, don't I? Another descriptor. Um, Devin Hunter. Devin Hunter. I love Devin Hunter. His books are accessible. They're very contemporary in just their attitude and their approach to to the craft. Um, his partner, Matt Aron, has written some amazing things on, there it is, that word again, amazing, on just psychic work. You know, there are so many. There are so many. And yeah, anyway, but just brilliant voices. And those are all authors that you will find in my personal library, and authors that I recommend, authors that we stock in the store, and authors that I recommend to people as they come in who are in your position, who are like, I'm really new and I need trustworthy information. And those are authors that I tell people, like, you can pick up pretty much any book written by this person and it's going to have good information in it, and it's going to have information that you will be able to put into practice, and ultimately you'll use in your practice. So remember some of those names. Okay, maybe skip back, rewind for the last few minutes, right, to write those down. Okay. Let's see. As far as where to go, that again can be a little bit tricky because I'm not entirely sure where you are. I want to encourage all of you who see this to do a little bit of digging and to check out your area to see if you have like little metaphysical shops, kind of like Cat and Cauldron. A lot of places don't. And if that's the case, then I would say maybe get in and look at like Meetup, get into Facebook or other social media platforms to see if there are maybe not metaphysical shops, but see if there are maybe local groups for like pagans or occult practitioners. And again, you want to be careful with that, right? You know, uh, and anytime you see a group of people, you're going to understand obviously that that group of people could potentially have some problematic people in it. That just happens anytime we're dealing with groups of people, particularly people that we connect with on social media. It is unfortunate, but there are again a lot of very extreme and sometimes very problematic personalities in the metaphysical community. But for every yucky garbage person that you find out there, you're probably going to find a handful of people out there that are also really that are legitimately cool people who are really looking for the same thing you are, and who are going to be able to really meet you in a cool way, that'll be worth your time to get to know. So yeah, but look for metaphysical shops. Most of the metaphysical shops that I'm familiar with, and as Austin and I, excuse me, I'm so sorry. As Austin and I have had opportunity, not a whole lot in recent years, but as we've had opportunity to travel and to check out some other metaphysical shops and just connect with many others around the world and around here in the US, through social media. Um, it's been our experience that most metaphysical shops, witchcraft shops, whatever they may call themselves, most of them actually have like they're in some capacity they're working or serving as community spaces as well. So you'll find that they have classes and events, and they'll have space for meetups and things like that, and that can be a really easy way for you to connect with other people that are kind of where you're at and seeking in the way that you are. So look into that as well. That would be where I would recommend. Yeah. Um, yeah. Anyway, I think I got through those. So again, thank you so much for your questions and good luck. And as always, feel free to continue to ask us other questions as they may come up. So let's see. All right. Question from Cami Welch. Let's see. We'd like to learn more on working with God slash goddess versus working with demons and angels. Boy, that's a big topic. That might need to be one that we actually talk about on like an actual, that might need to be just an episode in and of itself because that's kind of a big topic, Cami. Um, as far as like maybe just like a quick one here, I'll put a note in here so that we can maybe discuss that in greater detail on a future episode. Like we'll actually do like an episode topic for that. Um, the distinction there, I think, would really primarily be that demons and angels, and of course, right, this is just metaphysical theory, right? Because who really knows how these things work, right? But the theory, I think, is that we all kind of commonly agree on or share is that demons and angels, when you look at what could be identified as kind of like the scale, like the hierarchy of intelligent life, right? That demons and angels are not quite as high up on that scale as deities would be, right? Deities are beings that are, well, I don't know that I would say that they sit at the top of that scale because I'm personally of the belief that there are intelligences, spiritual intelligences and beings out there that we don't even have conscious awareness of yet. Um, but the idea is that deities sit above angels and demons on that hierarchy because of just the type of being that they are and the power that they wield. Um, with that in mind, when you look at the way that we work with these spirits, the idea is that demons and angels are good at facilitating magical work, working with us in a spiritual way for particular things. They can help us to make big changes occur. They can help us to work miracles, right? But they would be limited in some capacity based upon their power. They would not wield the power that say something like a god would wield, right? And so I guess to maybe give that a clearer example, say if I were going to work a spell where I wanted to create worldwide change, right? Like I needed to do a spell where I'm like, the whole world needs to be different after this spell kicks off. In that situation, I would probably resort to deity. I would probably work with or speak to a deity. Um, because those spirits are believed to have power. They exist. They materialize as beings, and they wield power that would be able to manifest on a worldly kind of level. Um, Angels, while it is believed that they can come close to that, angels do seem to kind of be a bit more focused in the type of ways that their power manifests. Angels are kind of believed, much like demons, angels are kind of believed to have very specific focuses for what they do. You've got, say, like the angel Michael, for instance, right? Michael is a very popular angel, and as an angel has a lot of power potentially to do a lot of different things for us, right? But more commonly, because of his association as a warrior, you're going to see people praying to the archangel Michael for protection, right? So that's kind of, again, the distinction there. You're going to see that angels, while they also wield a lot of power, they are not quite as capable. They cannot utilize or manifest that power on such a grand scale, right? They're a bit more focused. Okay. Demons are, I think, really, to be honest, kind of just the mirror side of angels. But I think demons, they do seem to kind of sit a little bit more. They're closer to humanity in the way that they in their being, in their aspect. Demons seem to have a clearer understanding of what it is to be human, which is not to say that they are human. I just think that demons, they have been closer to us. They have observed us more over the millennia that we've been around, and they have a clear understanding of what we value as humans, right? They understand that we need in the world that we live in that we need money to survive. They understand that we need food to survive. They understand that we get jealous, and that we get angry, and angels will understand those things too. But when you work with an angel on a magical level, they're not going to be able to appreciate um, that you are feeling a sense of jealousy, and because of that, you want to work a spell to make this thing happen. The angel is typically not going to comprehend the human understanding. Like they're not going to understand like, oh, you're jealous. You're a human. You get jealous. This is what jealousy is. They're not going to comprehend that. They're not going to understand that. All they're going to hear is you want this thing to happen. You need this thing to happen, right? And okay, I'll make this thing happen for you, right? Beyond that, they usually don't have a whole lot of concern around how they make that thing happen, as I kind of mentioned or commented in our last episode, right? You can ask an angel to create change for you, and they don't really have a whole lot of understanding for nuance, or they don't have, they're not a soft touch, where demons are much better at subtlety and manipulating things kind of behind the scenes, and they will understand human emotion a lot better. Um, gods are similar. Gods are similar in that they don't really have a lot of the time a sense for subtlety, depending on what it is we're asking for, right? Yeah. So that's going to be kind of at least some detail that I'll share. But like I said, I'll make a note so that we can discuss this in greater detail on a future episode. All right. But thank you so much for that. Well, I'm going to consider that a topic suggestion. Okay. We'll discuss this further. Okay. All right. Songs and Sorcery. If you guys haven't had an opportunity, please go check out this other podcast, Songs and Sorcery. Okay. They're also on YouTube and streaming in a few other places. Okay. Please go check them out. Okay. All right. Questions. Questions in regards to mediumship. Can't remember if we've done an in-depth view and explanation into the different types of mediumship. Oh my goodness. We have talked about this on the podcast, but there are a lot of different types of mediumship. And to be honest, I think that there are types of mediumship that we probably haven't even fully classified yet. We see commonly mediumship is really, to be honest, probably going to follow into the categories of what we could identify as the clairs, right? You're going to have mediums that have vision, right, where they actually will see spirit, right? Spirits will come through and will communicate in a visual manner. You'll have mediums that will receive auditory communication. You will have mediums that will get a similar, almost visual kind of communication, but it doesn't happen visually here. It's something that comes through in the mind, almost like a sentient kind of a communication. Um, a lot of people would classify that as telepathy, but I don't know that I would go quite that far. I don't know that it's a telepathic kind of communication. Something similar, perhaps. You've got physical mediums, which is the type of mediumship that I am personally experience, which is a tricky. I'll just say a very tricky type of mediumship to have to deal with, where you experience the physical symptoms of the spirits, the physical traits of the spirits that you encounter. Um, those I want to say it is a combination of those, really, to be honest, that you're going to find. Those are the big ones, and most mediums that I know actually have a combination of all of those. Like they're kind of in the middle of all of those. They have a little bit of one. We're not consistent. I had an experience just last night, to be honest. I did not sleep well. I was up at or I fought to sleep, and I finally at 6 a.m. was like, okay, never mind. And I just got up, and I got up and I kind of came out and I sat on the couch. And at that point in the day, it's we're verging on winter here and it's dark out and there really isn't much else I can do because the house is full of other people and they're sleeping. So I came out and I turned on the television and I just watched TV with the volume all the way down and the subtitles on. And I did that for about an hour and then of course I started to doze off again because I was so tired. And just about the time that I started to doze off, I audibly had a female voice come through and speak to me through my right, like a woman was in the room talking to me. And she woke me up. Like I had fallen asleep and she woke me up. But that's not a common occurrence for me. I don't typically have auditory experiences. I more often have the bodily sensations, and I see things more commonly. So, most mediums I know will, again, kind of experience all of these things at different times. So I think that it's tricky, and I think ultimately it's probably, to be honest, for all of us, kind of a waste of time for us to try to categorize mediumship because it's never a consistent skill. It's never a consistent thing. And the reason for that primarily is not to do with the living person. It's not the medium. It's the spirits that we're encountering because every spirit that we encounter is going to have different capabilities and in the way that it can communicate with us. Um, Not every spirit is capable of manifesting visually. Not every spirit is capable of auditory communication. Not every spirit is capable of these things. So yeah, so it's a difficult thing, I think, to categorize. Um, the second part of that question was how spirits can affect mediumship differently, and whether or not mediumship is bullshit. I'm going to tell you right now, I can say for sure mediumship is not bullshit. Um, I've had experiences as a medium overall, and I don't really do a lot of mediumship anymore because having worked primarily or having experienced mediumship primarily as a physical medium over the years, even from the time that I was a very small child. Um, my experiences as a physical medium have overall been very difficult. They've been very difficult. They've been very scary for me. Um, in the sense that when I connect with spirits, one of the ways that they typically identify themselves is they make me go through the moment of death. And so I've had moments where I've had a spirit put me through what it's like to be shot in the head with a bullet. Um, and I've had spirits put me through what it's like in the moment to be stabbed to death. And what it's like to suffocate from the fluid buildup in my lungs as I slowly die of lung cancer. So I've had these moments, um, and so I can say from my own experience, and because of ways that I have had a chance to see other mediums that I know are legit and mediums I respect, mediums like Austin, and Jennifer Martin, who's another very skilled medium who works at the store. Uh, I know that these people have the gift. And it's a hard gift to have sometimes. And I think one of the hardest things about being a medium, to be honest, is not only do we have to struggle with the challenges that the spirits put us through, but we also have to deal with a lot of nonsense from the living people because the living are so fascinated by mediumship and they read books by Sylvia Browne and they see ghost hunting shows on reality TV where they have a sensitive on the team who's claiming to feel things and picking up communication, they watch these things and they think that that's what mediumship is. And I'm not trying to say that it isn't because every medium is different. But they watch these things and they think like, oh, this is mediumship, right? And not always, not always. And it's hard, I think, sometimes to be able to explain how uh logistically how mediumship works as a practicing medium to the living. And it can be very frustrating because if you're not able to sit down and give someone what they would qualify as either a science book definition explanation of something that really can't be defined yet by science, or explain something to them in the way that the reality TV psychic explained mediumship to them, they they think that you're full of it. They don't think that you're legit, and it's very frustrating. But it's real. It's real. Um, spirits can affect your mediumship, again, as I mentioned a moment ago, based primarily on the way that they choose to communicate with you. So yeah, so that does happen. And that gets trickier to answer beyond that, unfortunately. But yeah, but they it's different types of spirits, different types of entities that you encounter can affect your skills as a medium differently. Absolutely. Yeah. There are spirits out there that actually have the ability to mask themselves. I've been in a number of situations where I've connected with a spirit who has presented as something, and I've been fooled. And um and you know and I have found out, you know sometimes much later, like weeks, months later, upon trying to connect with that spirit again, or revisiting that house, or that, whatever it is again, like, oh, you're not what I thought you were at all. Right. And just being clear, it is in no way am I trying to say that that spirit was trying to do that to be malicious. I think that sometimes these are intelligences, these are beings that, like they definitely, a lot of them, they've got their own agendas. They have their own reasons for behaving the way that they do. Let's see. Let's see. All right, you continue. Someone that you follow, a medium that you have seen on social media, has talked about drawing your soulmate thing. No, I'm gonna say that the whole draw your soulmate thing really kind of bothers me for a couple of reasons. Okay, and I'm gonna say really be really clear. Okay, I'm not in a position right now to say that I just that I believe that it's not possible, that it's not real. Okay, I don't. I won't say that it's not real. Okay, because I think there are people all over the world that have all kinds of amazing abilities. There's that word again, amazing. I gotta find another word. I gotta find another word. I think there are people all over the world that have really just people are spiritually gifted in so many different ways. And so I can't say that there aren't people out there that don't have really powerful connections between their psychic skills and artistic ability, and that they couldn't do something like this. Okay. The challenge I have where I see something like this being an issue is, overall, it doesn't serve the person who is getting that picture of that soulmate, because this to me is very much along the lines of something like twin flame kinds of theory, right? And it long term, it isn't benefiting the person who's being told. You have a twin flame, you have this, it isn't benefiting people to be told that information, because all that does is it programs it strengthens the belief in that person that there is only one other person out there, that there is only one other soul out there among billions that will ever really be able to love them in the right way. And that unless they're lucky and they do everything the way that they need to, they will never find that soul. They'll never find that soul. They will forever be star-crossed, right? That they'll, and that's another thing that we see with ideas like this, with like twin flames and soulmates, right? Is like, how many times have we heard like, oh, I met this person, they're my twin flame, right? And then you go on to hear about, well, what's that relationship like, right? And they're like, oh, it's awful. Like they're terrible to me, and the relationship has been horribly abusive. And and I went to see somebody, and they told me that it's been like this in every lifetime that we've had. And I'm like, that's not a twin flame. That can't be a twin flame. That can't be a soulmate. And that's not to say that those kinds of relationships, those soulmate soul contracts, it's not to say that those kinds of relationships are always meant to be perfect and happy. They're not, because we don't always grow through happiness and perfection, right? That's not possible. But if you're telling someone that, like, this person's your soulmate, and look, I even drew a pretty picture of them for you, right? Like, that person is going to go away from that experience thinking like this is my one and only. And until I can find this person, I'm going to be incomplete, right? This is the only person that will ever love me. This is the only experience I'll ever have, the only option I'll ever have for complete happiness, right? And that is a fucked up thing to do to somebody. That is a terrible thing to do to somebody, right? Not to mention, but who's to say that person isn't in a relationship right now that could be a really happy relationship? You know, like I've seen I've seen that exact situation happen. Young woman already involved in her marriage, really good marriage. You know, and I'm trust me, I get cynical around marriages. I've been reading for people for a long time. I have seen the worst. I have seen the absolute worst in people's relationships. And I'm very cynical when it comes to marriage and relationships, just in general. Um, but this was what I could say was not a perfect, but legitimately a very happy relationship, a very happy marriage. And she, for fun, went to somebody who got a reading. You know, this wasn't like a painting situation, right? But she went and she got a reading with a psychic who specialized in twin flame readings, right? And she went in and this woman gave her this reading and she described this person who was supposed to be her twin flame, right? And this person she described was like this 6 foot tall, very Nordic, you know, strawberry blonde, fair skinned, blue eyed, you know, like jock football, you know, boy next door, kind of, you know, middle American kind of white guy, you know, like described this to this woman, right? And in the meantime, her Eastern Indian, her Pakistani husband at home, who adored her, who doted on her, who definitely looked nothing like that, right? You know, I mean, and you know, and fortunately, this woman was intelligent enough to walk away from that reading and go, "Well, that was a lot of fun, but I think this woman was, you know, tapping into something else at least, you know. Like I won't say that she's a, you know, a fraud, but I don't think she got my reading right, right? But you know, but there are other people out there that would go through an experience like that, you know, that would go home and would be like, "Oh God, well, this person told me that my soulmate is that well that can't be you, right? You know, and I know that that sounds like a far-fetched kind of a situation, but it's not. I have had conversations with people over the years that they buy in. They buy in. They are, I don't know if it's gullibility. I don't know, like maybe the relationship that they're in is like maybe things are just not as happy as they want them to be, right? And rather than maybe saying like, you know what, well, nothing's perfect, right? Maybe we just need to work on some things, right? They would rather bail. They would rather buy into the fantasy and hold out hope that this illusory, you know, kind of character that has been promised them by someone will pop up, you know, and complete them in some way than to make the situation that they've got that maybe isn't perfect, but to make that situation work, right? And so people do that and they ruin their lives, right? So no, so I can't say that these things aren't real, but I think that they are sinister in a way, and I think that they ultimately they set people up to fail, and I think that they buy into a lot of people's insecurities about their own self-worth and their own value when it comes to people loving them, right? It's wrong. It's wrong. It's an evil thing to do to people. It's wrong. You know, these kinds of things, twin flame kinds of things, you know, as pretty as those scenarios can sound, it's a terrible thing to do to somebody. It's spooky season. Your next question. Still fairly easy to come into contact with entities during this time of year. Let's see. So I think you're kind of talking about like the idea of like the veil being thinner. Um, if you so the whole debate about the veil thinning is an interesting one because the I guess how to explain this. So if you look at and you study things like if you look into things like metaphysical laws, things that we would see kind of popping up around like disciplines or beliefs around like maybe like old hermetics systems like that, and you look at things like the belief of like metaphysical laws, um, and the understanding of different realms, and the idea of the energetic membranes that kind of separate different realms of consciousness and existence, right? This idea, this belief that the veil, right, that separates the realm of the living and from the realm of the dead, right, that the veil thins this time of year. Well, I will say that there does seem to be some truth to that, and I say that primarily because I and just about every other psychic, every other sensitive, every other witch, every other whatever that connects to spirits, communicates with spirits, we all are dialed up to 11 this time of year. It is very loud this time of year. Um, and so I will say that there's some truth to that, but I also want to say that those energetic membranes that separate different realms of consciousness or being, those things are never that they are always in flux. Those things are always in some state of flux. So this idea that the veil thins like just around this time of year, that's not true. The veil is constantly thinning, thickening. I don't know. Isn't that funny? We never really talk about the veil thickening. Um, yeah, the veil is growing thicker. Ooh, I don't know. But yeah. So, but there is some truth to it. But it happens all the time, right? Yeah. Uh. One last question on the subject of spirits. How often are, sir, naughty, naughty? No, I'm just kidding. How often are wet dreams and similar and the like caused by spirits and not just our imagination? Um, so that is an interesting question, and I'm hesitating to answer on that one because I guess I'm not quite sure in the context. I'm not quite sure by in what context you mean. Like, are you talking about spirits that are invading your dream state, or are you talking about spirits that are actually like manipulating your physical body, or both? I don't know. I'm hesitating to answer this one because I'm not quite sure in from which context, I guess, or from which direction are we talking? Let's talk about both a little bit. Okay, so um, I think we could probably all agree that spirits do have the ability to mess with us, right? Spirits do have the ability to um, it, infiltrate dream states, right? That's one of the reasons why we tell people, like, particularly if they've had unwanted spiritual activity in their homes, that in a process of clearing their homes, to spend a little bit of extra time and energy to do a little bit of extra clearing work in their bedrooms and their where they sleep at night, because we're highly susceptible when we're sleeping. Um, but so that is possible. Um, Beyond that, we also have experience from a lot of people's stories that there are spirits out there, spirits that would be more within the realm of maybe like poltergeist kinds of spirits that are able to physically interact with the living, the physical environment around them. Spirits that can physically interact with us. They can interact with, they touch us, they can actually interact with our bodies, right? Um, the challenge, I guess I would say, with something like that, as far as like this being like a consistent kind of thing, I'm gonna say probably not, mainly because it takes a whole lot of energy for spirits to interact with us in those ways, right? Most spirits out there, like just your routine kind of haunting, most spirits are not going to have that level of energy to be able to do something like that. Um, I would say if that were the case, you would more likely be seeing that be an example of maybe more like psychokinetic activity happening from a living person. Like that's more often than not kind of what's really kind of happening with poltergeist activity. Austin and some of the other practitioners at the shop and I will often go into houses to do clearings because people will have unwanted haunting activity, where like things around the house are being moved and they're like, oh, we have a poltergeist, right? we have an angry spirit that's moving things, and at least 50% of the time, that's really not the case at all. More often than not, what's happening is there's typically like more than one young person in the house, like teenagers in the house, and teenagers that have spiritual ability, and these are spiritual kids, that because they are untrained, and because they're kind of at that age where everything is just kind of just uncontrolled, they're having psychokinetic manifestations of their spiritual abilities, right? They're actually moving things in the house. And I know that can sound like really like sci-fi. That can sound like a little woo-woo for a lot of people, but that shit happens. Um, and a lot of the times that can actually be that can go hand in hand with legitimate haunting phenomena. That can happen. A lot of times, spirits will also be in the house, and spirits will be picking up on that energy, and that's when you get like some really disturbing poltergeist, some really disturbing haunting phenomena. When you have a physically manifesting, like a psychokinetic manifesting, like psychic person in the house, and a spirit in the house that has the inclination to be a maliciously kind of haunting spirit. That's typically that's where you run, like, you've got some trouble in that house. um Fortunately, that doesn't happen too common. That kind of experience is extremely rare. um but I would say yes, in answer to your question, these things can happen. I don't think that I would say this is probably not very common, though, that this would probably be fairly rare. um yeah, I think, yeah, I just an answer. This would have to be extremely rare. Yeah. Hey, question from Carlos. Question on spirit animals and spirit guides. Things are changing so fast nowadays. Are spirit guides really with you, guiding you, or do they just come and go? Um, Spirit guides and spirit animals, well, they're not permanent. A lot of them. Some of them can be, like spirit guides in particular, but we also have to remember that has a lot to do with our understanding of what permanent means, right? When you think of permanent, all that really means is just our understanding of permanence as it relates to this lifetime, right? Most of us think of like, oh, if it's permanent, like that means it's like, well, that means this lifetime, right? Because we really can't measure what happens after this lifetime, right? So a lot of us will have spirit guides, not spirit animals necessarily, but spirit guides that will be with us through this lifetime. Um, and maybe even into, whatever comes after this lifetime, right? Or maybe even what occurred before this lifetime, right? But all in all, more often than not, I guess I should say, spirit guides, they're not with us forever. They have other things to do. I think it might surprise a lot of people to learn that spirit guides, more often than not, like they're not just your spirit guides. Like they're working for a lot of other people too. And the work that they do for you is also, to be honest, actually work they're doing for themselves. Like the work that they're doing for you is also kind of part of what they need to be doing for themselves as they're evolving as spirits, right? It's like it's a job, right? And they're doing this to help you, but in the process, through what they're doing for you, they're also kind of learning and growing, right? Um, it has to work that way, right? It has to work that way. There has to be that kind of equilibrium, that kind of balance, right? Um, there's no point to it otherwise, right? What would be the point of having spirit guides otherwise, right? Um, so yes, so spirit guides will change. Spirit animals, I think, are actually inclined to change more frequently than spirit guides, and that's primarily because spirit animals have a bit more to do, or they connect more frequently to the archetypal energies that we channel in our lives through what we're going through. So, what that means basically is like as we go through phases in our lives, you may have a phase in your life where you're dealing with a very particular type of challenge. There will be a spirit animal that is identified through its archetypal energy as being very good at that kind of challenge, right? Like you'll have a spirit animal that is known for being like a survivor, right? Um, and so it's kind of there with you, right? Because in that particular phase that you're going through as you're dealing with that hardship, you need something to help you survive, right? Then as you're done with that phase and you move into another phase where now it's kind of about like, okay, like I survived, right? And the next phase is kind of about now being able to make the most now of the experience that I've learned, from that, being able to survive, right? So then you'll have another spirit animal then move in that is more kind of more about now being able to work wisely with the resources that you have, right? And so spirit animals kind of can cycle through our lives like that, and they do so, I think, a bit more consistently. Most of the practitioners that I've worked with over the years, folk practitioners, shamanistic practitioners, whatever they may be, as they navigate their lives, most of them have related that they have had several. They have gone through several different spirit animals, because they've changed so much, and things are always evolving, including their spiritual allies. So yeah, so that is normal for those things to change. Um, I also see your couple of your suggestion here for trickster gods and how to work with them, and I've got a note here. We will also be doing a future podcast episode with that as a topic. Okay, so thank you so much for that suggestion. Okay, you mentioned Pan specifically. Yeah, I would say Pan is actually a really cool deity, but you are right with your observation here that no, that he is not an entirely benevolent spirit. You are correct. Um, Still a cool spirit though. Yeah, I really enjoy Pan. Yeah, Pan is a fun one. Um, yeah. All right. I think I've got them all. So again, so thank you so much. Hopefully I haven't blathered on for too long. Thank you so much for joining me for this first episode of Esoterica. Like I said, I'll be back. You can look forward to one of these following each of our episodes, as long as we get questions anyway, and things that we need to follow up on. All right. So please, again, like, subscribe, follow us on YouTube, and I believe on Spotify for podcasters and a few other streamers, I think. And send us your questions. Submit your questions, right? And let us know how we're doing, right? Good or bad, right? Thank you so much, right? And you have a good day. Okay, bye.